Think about your life as a quest. It's going to be a quest that happens in 3 parts. You've got the preparation, you've got the journey of the quest itself, and then you've got the return home afterwards. As we start to think about this, on the preparation side, who are you going to take with you? What are you going to take with you? When you consider the people that are going to be going on this journey with you, what kind of traits and qualities and characteristics do they have? How are they able to support you on this journey? And what are your shortcomings where they can be able to help you? These are all the types of questions that we're going to consider when we have a look at today's book recommendation. When we start to look at this idea of archetypal psychology, when we start to look at the idea of who are these characters that we take alongside us in our life that aren't necessarily external and the people around us, but are more internal, the more like guiding images. What we're going to do is we're going to have a look at this idea as it's experienced and as it's expressed in Awakening the Heroes Within, which is an absolutely fantastic book which will help to guide you on this journey of going from the preparation, the journey itself, and the return. It's an extremely practical book. But before I talk about this in any way, what I would recommend, especially to any men that are watching this, if you haven't already read this book, is I would also recommend King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. Because this is going to go through 4 specific archetypes of what it is to be a man in his healthy fullness. So what is it to be a king, a warrior, a magician, and a lover? And very, very similar ideas are taken further forwards in this book, but we're going to discuss 12 of them instead of just 4. This is a landmark piece of archetypal psychology, especially in the men's world. So if you haven't read this, I would also definitely recommend it. But I'm aware that a lot of people who are in this kind of space online have already read a book like King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, which is why I'm offering a slightly different alternative for this. Just to talk you through this book specifically in terms of how it's laid out and why I really, really appreciate a book like this, is that first of all, it's got a questionnaire in it. And I know a lot of people like to go online and to do questionnaires to figure out personality types, or in the same way you might have a look if you're into astrology according to where all the different stars and planets and celestial bodies align in terms of your perfect mapping. This has got nothing to do with zodiac signs. It's got nothing to do with personality types in that way. But you can think about it in the same way as, who am I? What's going on? What's my internal makeup? How is this starting to influence my decisions? So a lot of this is going through the questionnaire in terms of how many of these archetypes are online for you. And when I use these word archetypes, I'm referring to like the idealized version of something. I'll give an example in a second to explain this to make it a little bit clearer. But when I think about, let's say, the archetype of a warrior, rather than thinking about any individual people who are good warriors, let's say throughout history, what I'm thinking of is what have they all got in common? If we abstract an idea above them, what is that warriorness about them? What does that actually look like in its healthy form and also in its unhealthy form? So we can learn to avoid that as well. That's another key part of this book. So what I find absolutely fascinating in a book like this is not only does it discuss this idea of the preparation, the journey, and the return, but it starts to also go through who you're going to have alongside you at different stages of that journey and who's going to benefit you at that point in time as well. Because as you're going through your life in general, or as you're tackling any goal or any obstacle, you're not going to just be relying on the same traits all the time. It's about understanding having a wider personality. So then rather than having to just rely on 5 traits to solve every problem in the world, instead we can start to look at it as, well, if I had 10 traits or 15 or 20 or 50 available, then all of a sudden I can give a much more nuanced and relevant solution to a problem as it occurs. And that's what all of this is about. Every single one of these archetypes, every single one of these abstractions is not just an idea. These are little personalities that live inside us that we can partake in. Each of these different parts of our personality say, okay, here's what my goal is, here's what I'm afraid of might happen, and if a problem turns up, here's how I'm going to deal with it. If I think about myself, let's say if I go back to this book, when we talk about King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, let's say the Warrior and the Magician, I'm just going to narrow it down for those two for this particular example. If I've got a problem, which is I need to work with a client in a way that I'm not quite sure about. So in that case there, immediately I might be thinking, right, I need to get my magician on board. The magician is going to be in charge of gaining wisdom, assembling a lot of knowledge, making sense of it all, bestowing that knowledge onto the world. And if I think about what my warrior is wanting to do, it's wanting to protect boundaries. It's wanting to make sure that I feel safe and away from any other threats. So already, as we can start to understand the difference between just those two ideas, there's going to be a big crossover in terms of they're both in service to somebody, both in service to me and to the world, but they've got very different aims. And I'm very, very much simplifying just with those two examples there. But the warrior is going to think about the world as a battlefield. It's going to think about it as, how can I win? How can I be victorious in this? That's what the goal of the warrior is to protect the boundaries and to protect who you are, but also, where possible, to be able to be victorious at certain situations. As you can imagine, the negative side of something like that is if it starts to go a little bit overboard and becomes very, very tyrannical. It becomes very, very much the aggressor rather than just the protector. But the magician isn't seeing the world like that. The magician is seeing the world as a place where there's a lot of ignorance and potential understanding. So as long as I was able to extract the wisdom from certain areas, then I would gain that knowledge and I could do something with that. Something that would be ideally, in a healthy way, good for me and good for the world. Or in a negative sense, or what might be referred to as a shadow sense, how I could then start to manipulate other people or manipulate the world around me. So we've got to be aware of this idea of healthy versus unhealthy, functional, dysfunctional, manipulated, and actually the fullest expression of what we should be doing. So that's why King, Warrior, Magician, Lover is an absolutely brilliant book, because it'll go through this idea for those 4 archetypes in terms of what does it look like and where does it come from? What happens if it's overcharged and undercharged? 2 words that I'm not going to explain in the sake of this video, because that's referring to this book specifically. But as we start to look at it for today's recommendation, which is Awakening the Heroes Within, it starts to really start to piece together this idea of which parts of my personality need to come online and at which time, and also how can I understand them? What are they trying to achieve? How does this fit in with the bigger picture of who I am? When there's a problem that occurs, how is that going to become relevant? How am I going to overcome that as well? And if that particular part of my personality can't manage it, and either can this or this or this, what's this 4th or 5th part of my personality which can maybe come online, which I'm not used to using all that much? Some of these personalities might be more useful for the preparation of the journey, where I need the knowledge. I need to be a good planner. I need to overlook the bigger picture. But on the journey itself, overanalyzing all the details will actually get in the way of the journey. So in that case there, I need courage. I need bravery. I need to be able to ask for support on the way, depending on the spontaneity of what is needed at that point. So there's different parts of me, and there's different parts of anybody that will be relevant, but it has to be based on the context. If you'd like another separate little hidden book for the sake of this video as well, so it's actually going to be 3 book recommendations in one, a lot of this is going to be made sense of if you look at a classic work by Joseph Campbell, which is The Hero with 1,000 Faces. Essentially, a book like this, if you like those previous 2 and you happen to be a reader, The Hero with 1,000 Faces and King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, imagine if those 2 books created another book. It's exactly this one. It's combining those ideas of what does it mean to go on a journey, to go on a quest, and what does it mean to assemble a healthy party, to assemble a healthy team to go on that journey itself. So as we've looked at a lot of this, it's understanding how we can find ourselves, but more importantly, how we can then transform ourselves. At the end of that journey, we've got the return aspect. So in that case there, I'm going to return home, potentially to the exact same home and the exact same situation and surroundings that I originally set off from, but maybe I've learned to see the world differently. Maybe I've learned to see myself differently. There's different traits and different characteristics that I can now rely on that I couldn't at the very start of that journey. And that's what all of this is about. It's not always about seeing a clear external transformation. It's much more important to have the internal transformation. I'm more interested in changing my eyes that see the world than just fixing my vision. I want to see things differently. I want to be in the world differently. I want to embody what it is to be me differently. And that's what we're talking about when we're talking about these quests and these journeys and these transformations. So as we're looking at this, I would highly, highly recommend, if you haven't already, these two sort of hidden books, if you like. These are unofficial recommendations, but they're nice little bonuses. So King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, and The Hero with a Thousand Faces. Two amazing books. And if you happen to already like those or have heard about them before, then there's probably a very good chance that you'll like this, because this is just the perfect blend of both of those two. This is Awakening the Heroes Within by Carol Pearson.